welcome to another episode of NFI Hammer. I'm very excited about this video because this will be my first ever game of Warhammer and my first ever tabletop game. My friend Andy was into the hobby when he was younger and he has recently gotten into it again. So he and I decided to have our very first game of 10th edition. He had collected the old Aeldari models with the metal on them, so his army will be up against my Necron army. We've also decided just to limit ourselves to 500 points, as this should hopefully be fairly straightforward and simple, but we're using all of the normal rules. So if you've been following along in my journey, I've been in this hobby now just for 6 months and 1 week. I'm very excited that it's all culminated to this. And every bit of Necron army model that you see in this battle report and all the terrain, you can watch a video of me painting and assembling it here on this channel. And honestly, I wouldn't be here today making this video if it wasn't for all the kind support and encouragement from everyone that's watched my videos, left a comment or subscribed. So if you want to follow on my journey, please consider hitting the like and subscribe button. It's totally free and you can undo it at any time. So to getting started into this battle, to set the scene, we have got an Aeldari battle force that's kind of crash landed on this alien planet. At the same time, a Necron tomb world is emerging and they've set out a scouting party. So let's go through the Necron units. So again, these are all units that I've created and painted on this channel, but I'm going to go through each one of the data sheets and familiarize myself with what abilities that they have. So leading my army is an overlord. This guy was a lot of fun to paint, but he also has a really cool ability called My Will Be Done, which allows you to use a stratagem every battle round for 0 CP. He is also equipped with a Void Scythe because I'm doing the what you see is what you get, so that's what came in the box. And so that does devastating wounds. So let's familiarize ourselves, and me especially, because I've got NFI idea what I'm doing, with what devastating wounds means. So to understand devastating wounds, first you have to understand what mortal wounds are. So these are like regular wounds, except that you skip over any saving throws, allocate it straight away, and it also bleeds over to other units in the model. So what the devastating wounds does is when there's a critical wound, which is an unmodified roll of 6, it then converts the weapon over to doing devastating wounds based on the weapon's attack. So I think I got that right. Again, I've never played before. I'm doing this kind of to just figure out and learn myself. But if I get anything wrong, please let me know in the comments. It's very overwhelming for a beginner, and I'm sure I'm making lots of mistakes. But the Overlord unit is not alone. He is going to be supported with 20 Necron warriors, and they're going to be equipped with Gauss Reapers, because that's what I've assembled them with. Gauss Reapers have the ability Lethal Hits, which is basically a mini devastating wounds in that when you score a critical hit, it automatically wounds the targets, but these are just regular wounds, not mortal wounds. They have an interesting ability called Their Number is Legion, and so what this does is whenever the reanimation protocols is triggered, it reanimates D6 wounds instead of D3. So let's have a quick look at what the reanimation protocols is. So this is the Necron special ability, and what it does is every time a unit is damaged, you can recover extra wounds at the end of your command phase. And basically it just kind of heals any damaged units, and then if there's any dead units, it will bring them back to life. And you may have also noticed that the Overlord that I had before also is equipped with a Resurrection Orb. And so what that does is that it also triggers this reanimation protocols in your opponent's turn. So whenever Andy's command phases end, it will also trigger it. But then that's combined then with the Necron warriors, so they'll regenerate D6. So I'm hoping as long as he doesn't manage to kill them quickly, that they'll just keep healing and keep coming back. My opponent has more to worry about than just these Necron warriors though. I'm also bringing with me some Scarab Swarm, 6 unit composition. These have pretty basic weapons, just the feeder mandibles, but they have lethal hits, so we've talked about that before. But one of the cool abilities that this unit has is the Deadly Demise. Basically, when a unit is destroyed, then it blows itself up, and when it rolls a 6 on a d6, then every model suffers a number of mortal wounds denoted by X. The unit actually has this self-destruction ability, which is sort of like a targeted Deadly Demise. If you're in engagement range with an enemy, you can opt to use it, and if you roll a 2 to a 5, it does 1 to 3 mortal wounds, and then on a 6 it gets d3 plus 3 mortal wounds. So mortal wounds are pretty devastating, so this should be pretty fun little kamikaze bomb. To pair this off, I'm actually bringing a Canoptic Spider as my final unit. This one also has Deadly Demise, which we talked about before, as well as some ranged weapons like 2 particle beamers. But it also has an ability to bring back 1 Scarab Swarm in my command phase, back from the dead. So that combined with reanimation protocols should hopefully be up for some good shenanigans and have some funny laughs. It also has some extra abilities, but one that's interesting is the Gloom Prism. When a Necron unit is within 6 inches of the bearer, so it includes itself, there's a Feel No Pain against psychic attacks. Feel No Pain is actually a really powerful ability, it seems to me, in the 10th edition, where even, mortal wounds, you have an extra chance of a save, so it operates like a second save. You can do your normal save, or you can do an invulnerability save, but if somehow the attack goes through, you can roll the dice, and if it comes up with the number denoted by X, it actually just shrugs off the damage. So this Feel No Pain 4 will actually only need a 4 or higher to ignore psychic attacks. But it also has a Feel No Pain 6 for any vehicles, but this is the only vehicle that I'm bringing with me, so should be interesting and a lot of fun. And finally, for the Necrons, there's a detachment rule. So at the moment there is only 1 detachment rule per faction, but there's more on the way. At the moment for the Necrons, it's Awakened Dynasty, which means that if you've got a Necron character leading the unit, you just get 1 to every hit roll. Kind of, works with the lore where the Necrons are mindless drones, but the characters are kind of a little bit more sentient and self-aware, so when they're attached to a unit, they're able to kind of direct them and hit better. That seems pretty powerful, but now if we start to look at Andy's Aeldari force, it's got a battle host attachment, and that enables you to reroll 1 hit roll and 1 wound roll each time a unit from your army is selected to shoot or fight. That seems pretty powerful as well. I guess a 1 could become a 6, whereas with the Necron, it's only ever going to increase it by 1. It should be interesting. We can try and dive into the battle force against the Necrons. I'm not going to try and pretend that I know much about Aeldari. I know very little about Necrons, but what I do know is about 100 times more. But just to kind of prepare myself for what I'm up against, let's go through the units that he's going to be bringing along. His leader is Morgan Ra. Apologies if I'm mispronouncing these. This guy looks pretty scary. He has an invulnerable save of 4+, and a regular save of 2+, so that's going to be very difficult to damage. He also has some abilities where he's leading a unit, add 1 to the hit roll, which is the detachment roll of the Necron he has built into his kit. And he also has Faces of Death, so whenever he targets a unit that is below half strength, you can reroll the hit roll and reroll the wound roll. So that's pretty powerful. pretty scary. And he's leading a team of Dark Reapers. Dark Reapers, I'm not exactly sure what war gear options he's going with, but these guys look pretty scary as well. They make a ranged attack. You can ignore any modifiers on the ballistic skill and hit roll, so any debuffing stuff will not affect this unit. I'm not sure if that includes cover, but I'm assuming it does. Yeah, these do not look fun to verse. And then he's also bringing another named character, Jane Czar, and this person, again, adds 1 to the hit roll. But once per turn, you can actually use the heroic intervention stratagem for 0 CP. That's pretty strong ability. And this is leading some Howling Banshees, which are equipped with the Shuriken pistol. It can declare a charge when it falls back or advances. So normally that's not possible. So these guys are going to be hypermobile on the field. And then to finish off the squad, he's got some Swooping Hawks, which have a very long 24-inch range las blasters. At the end of my turn, if this unit is not within engagement range, they can remove it from the battlefield and put it into strategic reserves. So it's got a lot of mobility built in. Talking about mobility, let's actually start to have a look at what the battlefield consists of. We're going to do a deployment search and destroy, which is like this 4-quadrant field. I'll go into more when we start to see the battlefield. And we're also, the primary mission is Vital Ground. So this is basically going to give you 2 victory points in your own deployment zone, 5 victory points for any objective markers in the no man's land, and then if somehow you manage to get into their deployment zone, that's worth 6 victory points. And then the mission rule is that once you've captured an objective, you don't need to hold troops there to keep claiming it, which will be very helpful for us because we just have such a small number of units in this big battlefield. This is a picture of the battlefield that we've got, and that's been set up like that deployment zone. There's 3 types of terrain on this battlefield. The first is the center, where there's a archivault, which is a vast store of technological mysteries. And this just acts like a normal kill or building. So it's 2 inches high. Units have to include that into their vertical distance, unless you're a flying unit, which you can go directly up. And it also blocks line of sight. Then touching those, there's 2 pipes going off into different directions. To talk about pipes, we need to talk first about benefit of cover. So with the benefit of cover, if a unit has that, you can actually add 1 to the saving throw. There's some exceptions where that doesn't apply, but generally it's pretty beneficial. There's 2 sets of fuel pipes leading out from the archivault, and what the fuel pipes do is that if a infantry model is 3 inches within the terrain feature and is not fully visible, so on the other side, then they get the benefit of cover. And you can move over this terrain feature as if it was not there because it's under 2 inches tall. Then we've got 2 ruins. So ruins are a little bit more complicated. They have a footprint, which is the agreed upon size. It's not just those corner pieces, but the area in between. And infantry models can kind of move through them as if they weren't there, including the ceilings and roof and stuff. The interesting thing that it has is it completely blocks visibility, so units can't see through it. So if you're hiding a unit in the back there, then they can't be seen. And again, if you're inside that, you get that benefit of cover, but you have to be wholly within the terrain feature. So all the models have to be inside. So now that we've got the terrain feature sorted, there's the 5 objective markers, and this is the deployment zone. So now we've got all the boring rules and stuff out of the way, let's get the battle started. So this is the behind the scenes shot of the table that we're playing on, and we've just kind of got the rules cards and pieces of paper and some printed data cards there, and we decided that we weren't going to play with any second objectives because we've only got the primary ones that we had talked about before, This meant that the strategic objectives were the only ways to score victory points, which ends up being very important later in the match. We did a roll-off to see who would go first, and so I nominated Andy to be the defender, which meant that he put his units down first, and we just kind of alternated placing our units, but we only had 3 units each, so it wasn't too complicated. So that part went pretty quickly. This is how those units were kind of placed. So you can see that I put my blob of 20 warriors just below the archer vault, which is 9 inches away from the center of the battlefield. And I also put my scarabs just to the west of them, and then I put the canoptic spider within 3 inches of the objective marker to capture that point. So I think at this point I hadn't really screwed up, but from here on pretty much every decision I make is the worst possible decision to make. On the other corner of the board, Andy has set up his Aeldari, kind of similar to mine, but just placed his units more on the objective markers. Andy also, with the Aeldari, has this fate rule where you can roll 12 dice at the start of the game, and then you can use those dice instead of rolling normally, so you kind of fix the outcome. He got really unlucky on his roll, so every time you re-roll you lose 1 dice, but he still ended up with these dice here, 10 dice to use throughout the battle. I rolled the dice and ended up moving first. As we were playing the sweep and clear, it says that once you control an objective marker, you don't need to remain on it to keep control. However, you can't score points until the second round, so I did not move my canoptic spider because I thought I'd have to wait till the second round to claim it. However, when it was Andy's turn, we kind of decided that you can claim it even though you don't score any victory points. So I don't know if anyone in the comments knows and wants to help clarify that rule. But I ended up just leaving the spider where it was, which ended up being a really dumb decision because he's only got a movement of 5 inches. And he's kind of just left out in the open, and so you'll see later that was a terrible idea. And then my other terrible idea in this movement phase was that I was trying to use my Necron warriors to move up on top of the center on the vault, and because they've also got a movement of 5 inches, then it's 2 inches to get up, so it's very difficult to scale to the top of the building. But my idea was if I could get at the top, I could kind of shoot at anyone in the vicinity and they wouldn't be able to shoot me because I'm on the roof. That turned out to be the opposite case, as we'll see later. And I also did an advanced roll, and I only rolled a 2 here, and it was not enough to kind of get any units up on top. But I did manage to move 2 warriors and my overlord. However, that was the third silly move in this round because the overlord cannot be killed until all the bodyguard has been killed. But while there's a unit visible, people can shoot at it. So he's basically just sitting up there being a target for everybody else to shoot. And because he doesn't have any ranged weapons, because I'm doing the what you see is what you get, he can't shoot back. That was really dumb. And then the third dumb thing that I did was I moved my scarabs into the ruins. But because they're not infantry, they can't move through the ruin walls as if they weren't there. So I had to kind of move them inside, wasting some inches of movement because I've got a 9-inch movement. And then the next turn I have to use lots of movement to just get them out again. And there really wasn't any point in doing that other than just avoiding getting shot at in the very beginning. That was the end of the movement round for me, and then it was up to Andy. He moved his units back a bit just to avoid getting shot because my Reaper's weapon has only got a 12 inches, so I can't hit him, but he had a longer range so he could hit me, and because I'm on the roof he could shoot at me easily with clear visibility. I ended up losing 3 Necron warriors from the shots, but I was able to bring them back with the reanimation protocol, and because I can use 1 free one as a ability on my overlord, it didn't cost me any command points. So then it was back to my turn, so then I moved my units further up onto the roof of the archvault. And again, like, I'd fully committed to this at this point, so there wasn't really any way of backing out. But it just meant that it was even easier for the Aeldari units to shoot at me. And it kind of seemed counterintuitive from like every action movie that I've ever watched where the sniper or the criminals are on the roof and everyone's on the ground floor and they're getting shot at and they can't shoot back. But in Warhammer, it seems like if you're on the roof, then you're a massive target, and it's not necessarily easy for you to shoot back at the ground if your gun doesn't have a good range. So I feel like I've been lied to by every action movie I've ever watched. What I didn't realize is we probably should have been playing this as the hills terrain feature, so it includes industrial structures, but basically units that are wholly within it get the benefit of cover. It still wouldn't have really made much of a difference for me because I couldn't get all 20 units on the top very easily, and he does have some weapons that ignores cover. I think it would have at least made it somewhat beneficial to have done that. Otherwise, there just seems like absolutely no advantage to being on higher ground. I was able to actually shoot at some of the units in the Aeldari army here, so that was one of the 3 attacks that I made in this game. And I managed to kill, I think it was 1 unit here, which was pretty good because I only had about 5 units that could reach, so I got some lucky rolls and yeah, managed to pick off one of the troops. I also moved my Necron spider now that I'd captured the first objective marker in my second turn, and I moved that, I think 5 inches? No, I think I did an advance roll of like 7 or 8 inches, and this was a really dumb move. If I just kept it where it was or moved it towards the warriors or pretty much anything other than that, it would have been fine. But I ended up moving it right in between the crack of the ruins and the archvault, which meant that the Aeldari troops could kind of just snipe it from the other side of the map through that little crack. But at the time I was trying to move it to that second objective marker so that I could get some more victory points, because the ones in the no man land were 5 victory points. And then with my scarabs, even though they have 9 inches, I was only able to really move them about 5 inches up the board because I had to get them out of the ruins, and so I had to kind of go out and then right. And I think again on my... Oh no, I didn't use an advance move for this because I was planning on charging those troops in front of it here during my charge phase. However, Andy ended up using a stratagem to pull back his troops, so I couldn't actually get in charge range of 12 inches. And so not only did I not charge, but I didn't do an advance roll, so they were just kind of slowly moving up the field. Also, the other winged units of Andy's has this ability where they can teleport off the field at the end of my turn and then teleport back as deep strike units. So one of his units just disappeared and then it was his turn. In this turn, he just fired his weapons at the spider through that little crack and managed to wound it down to 2 wounds. And he got pretty unlucky with the rolls. It probably would have been able to kill it if he got luckier, but there has a feel no pain 6, and that managed to kind of keep it alive for a little bit. I think he shot some shuriken pistols up at the Necron unit there. With the reanimation protocols, it wasn't really doing much damage. I don't really remember what happens next. I know that my Necron spider triggers the reanimation protocol, which I can only do in my command phase, and I rolled a 1 on the d3, so it went back up to 3 wounds. But none of my troops moved, so I can't remember how that was possible. What happened next was that Andy's turn, he brought his troops into the deep strike and spawned them at my victory marker, and then was able to shoot at the spider. And I would have triggered Overwatch at that point because a deep strike counts as a normal move, and that my spider has an 18-inch weapon, particle beamers. I'd already used my Overwatch on the Necron warriors when Andy had advanced his Aeldari troops to kill another one of those. So I wasn't able to use Overwatch twice. So he was able to pick off and remove the last 2 wounds on the Necron spider. So it literally moved 5 inches plus a couple for the advanced roll, and then died and didn't even get a single shot off. So that was pretty pointless of me bringing that. Didn't really do anything other than just a punching bag. Then what Andy did with the other 2 troops that were still on the east side of the board was unleash all their attacks at the Necron blob. So this is when I found out that the Dark Reapers, their Exarch, is equipped with a Tempest launcher. I was playing what you see is what you get, but because these models that in the Aeldari are over 20 years old, we were playing you can equip them with anything you wanted. And so the Tempest launcher has a 36-inch range with indirect fire, which means that you can shoot it anywhere. And it also has the blast keyword, which is basically the Achilles heel of this unit, because what it does is for every 5 models in the unit, you add an additional hit. So because there's 21 models in that unit, you get 4 hits, and then it also has a 2d6. During all of these interactions between the things, the Aeldari can re-roll 1 hit roll and 1 wound roll. So that means if he hits 4 out of the 6 shots, he can re-roll 1 of those shots and hopefully get it. And same with the wounds. So over time, because so many shots were being fired constantly, it was just chipping away at the damage. Plus the addition of the fate rolls, so those 10 dice at the beginning, meant that during like critical things like determining how many hits, you can use a 6 to guarantee that there'll be 6 hits through. He unleashed all the attacks at those warriors, and at one point I did reanimation protocols, which recovers a d3 plus 3 because it's capped near an objective marker. It's kind of hotly debated how the interactions between the stratagem and the Necron warrior interacts, but I just took it on the simplest value. Some people add them together, some people just select 1. So even though I brought back 4 because I rolled a 1 on the d3, he was able to charge and finish them off. So that's 24 separate successful hits in 1 turn from those 2 units into the warrior blob until there was nothing but my overlord standing. Because they were completely wiped out when it was my turn, the reanimation protocols does nothing because there's nothing to revive. It's pretty devastating. When I realized that I was going to get my troops completely wiped out, which I wasn't expecting to be wiped out in 1 turn, I started doing command re-rolls to try and roll back and save some of the units, because I hadn't really spent any command points up until this phase because I wasn't within shooting distance of anything other than the Overwatch, which didn't cost me any command points. However, in hindsight, there's this stratagem called Go to Ground, so I could have selected the infantry unit and given it a 6 vulnerable save and the benefits of cover. So even though some of the weapons have ignore cover, for the ones that didn't, it could have been valuable. Plus the 6 invulnerable saves on 24 hits, should have saved at least a couple of units from death, and it would have probably made the difference. But I wasn't even really aware of this stratagem at the start, plus I didn't really expect it was possible to do that much damage in 1 turn, so lesson learnt. So when it was just down to the Overlord, I was able to finish off the remaining troops, but not the named character Jane Czar. And then it was back to Andy's turn to finish off, and that was my Overlord dead. He also managed to get some shots off on the Necron scarabs. So when it was my turn, there was literally no way of winning at this point because my 2 units that had objective control were wiped out, and then the only unit left had 0 objective control. Plus, because the Aeldari had captured my deployment zone, that was giving 6 victory points per turn, plus the other 2, then that was giving another 12, and because he can just teleport the units, he just teleported from my victory objective marker to the other one in no man's land, and so basically had all 5 markers captured. But wanting to have some revenge for wiping out my squad, the scarabs did a charge move into the Jane Czar that was just sitting on top of the roof, and it was able to do a self-destruct and destroy it, so I didn't even go into combat. And then with the 2 remaining Aeldari units, they just kept shooting at the Necrons in the center until it was dead. Which to me, again, seems really weird that if you have beetles on a roof of a building, that people on the ground level can shoot the beetles in the middle of the roof. It does seem odd, but there is line of sight, so it does work on the rules. But yeah, again, I think I've been lied to from all action movies where people are able to like sit up and not be seen on roofs of buildings. And that was the end of it. So I think I did about 3 attacks in the 3 hours that we spent playing, and I got 9 victory points, and the Aeldari got something like 50 victory points and completely wiped me off the map. If you've stuck around this far, thank you. I really apologize that this was a little bit chaotic and a little bit all over the place, and I rambled quite a lot. But if you did get this far, please consider leaving a like or subscribe, but more importantly, I'd love a comment just for you explaining how you found the video and any suggestions. In short, it was really a lot of fun, despite being quite overwhelming. But next time, I'm looking forward to having a second go now that I know what to expect. And in the meantime, I'll just continue painting my Necrons, and hopefully I'll miraculously find some time to paint my Tyranids that I got from the Leviathan box. Anyway, until then, thanks for watching, and I'll see you next time.